We were all told the same thing growing up. Do your chores. It builds character. For years I believed it. I really thought that wiping down counters and scrubbing toilets was forging me into a better, more responsible person. But what if that was a lie? Or at least not the whole truth? What if scrubbing this plate isn't building character? What if it's my first lesson in existential dread? This is the story of how I realized my weekly to-do list wasn't just a list of tasks. It was a secret curriculum, a hidden psychological war that was teaching me about the very nature of human suffering. The universal problem. Let's be honest. There's a universal sinking feeling that comes with the weekly to-do list. It's the quiet dread of a Sunday afternoon when you know the laundry basket is overflowing. Again, it's that sigh before you plunge your hands into a sink full of greasy dishes. We've all been there. And for generations, we've been fed this simple, almost folksy wisdom that this drudgery is good for us, that it teaches responsibility, perseverance, and a strong work ethic. Some long-running studies have even found that kids who do chores often grow up to be more competent and well-rounded adults. And I don't entirely disagree with that. There's no denying that learning to contribute to a household is valuable. It teaches you time management and how to get organized, but that explanation always felt incomplete. It felt like a glossy cover painted over a much darker, more complicated story. It totally ignored the profound sense of futility, the sheer grinding repetition of it all. What if the character being built wasn't just about responsibility, but about something much deeper? What if chores were our first real encounter with the philosophical burdens that define being human? The thesis. Here's where it all clicked for me. Chores weren't designed to teach us character in the way we were told. They were actually our first lesson in the nature of human suffering. Now, I don't think our parents were secretly existential philosophers assigning us homework, but the very structure of chores, the fact that they're cyclical, thankless, and never-ending, perfectly mirrors the grand, often invisible struggles of life. They're a small-scale version of a much larger psychological war we all have to fight. It's a war against meaninglessness, a battle to find purpose in the mundane, and a struggle to accept that some work is never ever finished. I believe chores taught me 3 profound and frankly brutal lessons about what it means to be human, and understanding them has changed everything. Lesson 1. Futility, the Sisyphean task. The first and most immediate lesson is futility. Just think about washing the dishes. You scrub, you rinse, you dry, you put them away. The sink is empty, gleaming. You feel a fleeting, beautiful moment of accomplishment. But what happens next? You eat again. And the sink, once your source of pride, fills right back up. The same goes for laundry. You wash, dry, fold, and put away every single sock, only to see the hamper start to fill up the very next day. This endless cycle is the modern definition of a Sisyphean task. In Greek mythology, Sisyphus was a king punished by the gods. His eternal punishment was to roll a massive boulder up a hill, only to watch it roll back down every single time he got near the top. He had to start over. Forever. This myth hits so hard because on some level, we all have a boulder we're pushing. For a lot of us, our first boulder was the chore list. It's our introduction to the idea that some work is never truly done. It's a relentless, repetitive loop. Even amazing achievements are often just the result of tedious, step-by-step work. But unlike a project that has a clear finish line, chores seem to mock our desire for it to be over. And this isn't just about the physical work, it's about the psychological weight. The philosopher Albert Camus saw Sisyphus as the ultimate absurd hero, someone who is fully aware of how meaningless his task is, but does it anyway. Chores are our first taste of this absurdity. They teach us that life is full of necessary, repetitive actions that don't have a grand finale. Learning to face that futility without falling into despair is one of the hardest and most important lessons there is. It's the realization that most of life isn't about reaching the finish line, but about the act of pushing the stone itself. Lesson 2. Chosen versus unchosen suffering. So, if chores are basically an exercise in futility, why do them? This brings us to the second lesson. The huge difference between chosen and unchosen suffering. The misery of having to clean your room or mow the lawn is, for the most part, a low-stakes, predictable kind of hardship. You could call it chosen suffering. You might not want to do it, but you choose to, either to avoid getting in trouble, to make your parents happy, or just to live in a space that doesn't feel chaotic. This is training. it's resilience practice. Because as we all find out, life is filled with unchosen suffering. You don't choose to get sick. You don't choose a painful breakup. You don't choose to lose your job. These are the boulders that just appear in our path without our consent. They are the sudden, chaotic, and truly painful hardships that can completely derail our lives. Chores, in their own small way, prepare us for this. They teach us how to show up and do something difficult, even when we have zero desire to. They build the mental muscle of perseverance in the face of monotony. Research even shows that children who do chores regularly can develop higher self-esteem and are better at dealing with frustration. This isn't just about being good at chores, it's about building self-regulation, the ability to manage how we respond when things get tough. By repeatedly dealing with the low-grade, chosen suffering of our to-do list, we're basically conditioning ourselves to handle the high-stakes, unchosen suffering that life will inevitably throw our way. We learn that we can endure discomfort. We learn that we can keep going even when a task feels pointless. The act of cleaning your room when you'd rather be doing literally anything else is a small rebellion against your own inertia. It's a declaration that you're in control, not your fleeting desires or your feelings of apathy. And that is some powerful psychological armor to carry into the unpredictable battles of adult life. Lesson 3, the morality of mess. The third lesson is maybe the most sneaky and the most important one to unlearn, the false morality of mess. Somewhere along the line, most of us absorb the idea that cleanliness is next to godliness, that a tidy home is the sign of a virtuous person, and that a messy room is a symptom of a moral failing. We're told we're lazy or irresponsible if we can't keep up. For a lot of people, this turns into shame. This is especially true for women who often bear the unfair mental load of planning and organizing all the household tasks, which can lead to higher rates of depression and stress. The unequal division of all this invisible work is a massive source of distress. But what if all of that is just wrong? Therapist K.C. Davis has championed a revolutionary idea. Care tasks are morally neutral. Struggling to keep up with the laundry doesn't make you a failure. Having a sink full of dishes doesn't mean you're a bad person. These things aren't indicators of your morals. They are simply tasks. Their only purpose is to create a functional environment for you. An overflowing laundry basket is not a statement about your character. It's a pile of dirty clothes that needs to be washed. That's it. This concept is so liberating. It separates our self-worth from our to-do list. It lets us approach chores not from a place of shame, but from a place of self-compassion. On days when you're struggling, whether it's with depression, burnout, or just feeling overwhelmed, the goal isn't perfection, it's functionality. What's the bare minimum you can do to care for yourself today? Maybe it's just washing 2 coffee cups so they're ready for tomorrow morning. By stripping the moral judgment away from these tasks, we take away their power. They're no longer a measure of our goodness, but just a neutral part of taking care of ourselves, like brushing our teeth. This shift in thinking allows us to see that we deserve to live in a functional space, and that struggling to maintain it isn't a moral failure. It's just a sign that we're human. The reframing. So after all this, do I still think that chores build character? Yeah, I do, but not in the simple way I was taught. Chores don't build character by making us neat and tidy little soldiers. They build character by forcing us to confront some of life's biggest philosophical problems head on at a young age. They teach us that life involves a certain amount of meaningless repetition and that we have to find a way to endure it. They teach us to choose small, manageable hardships so that we can become strong enough to face the big, unmanageable ones. And hopefully, they teach us to separate our worth as a person from the state of our homes. The real character they build isn't about becoming a good person who always does their chores. It's about becoming a resilient person who can stare into the abyss of an endless to-do list and not fall apart. It's about learning to create your own meaning, even in the most mundane tasks. Conclusion: the journey from seeing chores as a miserable burden to seeing them as a kind of philosophical training is a long one. It's the journey of realizing that the enemy isn't the pile of laundry, but the shame we attach to it. It's understanding that resilience isn't built in big moments of heroism, but in the quiet, repeated decision to show up for the tedious tasks of daily life. Albert Camus, in his essay on Sisyphus, ended with a revolutionary thought. The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Sisyphus is happy not because he loves his pointless task, but because in that moment of walking back down the hill to get his boulder, he is conscious, he is aware, and he is the master of his own fate. He accepts his reality, and in that acceptance, he finds freedom. Maybe we can find that too. Maybe we can look at the dishes in the sink not as a failure, but as proof that we have nourished ourselves. We can look at the messy living room as a sign that it has been lived in and enjoyed. And in that moment of acceptance, we can choose to push our own boulders, not out of shame or obligation, but as a conscious and maybe even empowering act of living. So I want to ask you, what's the chore you hate the most? And what's the profound or even absurd life lesson it has taught you? Share your story in the comments below.